in-person session that was open to all faculty on the Cornell campus. We'd invite them in, we'd go through all sorts of information, cram together how to redesign face-to-face course materials to go online. And that could be in the form of a blended course or a fully online course. We had a full variety. Susan participated last summer or the summer before? Summer before, 2 years ago now. So I don't know if you had anything to add about what...
No, it was good. Intense.
Intense. Yeah. And that's the feedback we got, is that it's a lot of information crammed into one day. And it would be really nice to not only learn the content, but to see the implementation in an online environment. So we went ahead and built a course that will be open to anyone with a Cornell Med ID, a Blackboard course that teaches you how to teach online. So it becomes very meta. So we take you through how do you design your content? What do you need to know about accessibility? Let's think about the student experience. And while we're doing that, we're embedding different sorts of content presentation, different sorts of assessments. So really giving faculty and instructors going through this the full range of options that are available. So you get to experience from the student side everything that Blackboard has to offer before you might be tempted to build something without knowing what the student experience is. So I'm going to focus today on 3 main sections. We're going to start here in the Intro to Online Learning. And then we're going to jump ahead to Module 7, the student experience, because there's some videos there that I would really like everyone to watch and see. And it's always really nice when we can hear our student voice. And then we will circle back to accessibility, because that, I think, is where we get most of our questions, or at least the most frequent, like, hey, I've got a question about captioning or transcripts or whatever it might be. Patrice handed out index cards, so I don't know if you guys want to actually take time to collect those now. And if anyone in the chat has a question to add, we are collecting. So what questions do you get asked about teaching and learning online?
Yeah.
And if you're not in a support position where you're being asked questions, if you are teaching, what questions do you have? So we'll compile that list, and then we'll finish today by answering them, or if we don't have an answer, we'll say, that's awesome, we'll look into it, and we will hopefully, if there's a trend start to emerge, we'll incorporate that into the online course. Oh yeah, and we are also recording this Zoom session. So it's always hit or miss on how Zoom recording quality. So we'll review it, and we might make it available if it is legible or audible. So the course begins, we like to mirror good design. We begin with a Start Here section that takes faculty through a good design process. We're asking them to introduce themselves, excuse me, by completing a welcome discussion forum. So when we talk about teaching online, we have our community of inquiry in mind. We want to build that social presence right from the beginning, get everyone feeling like they're on the same page. We also model a getting started journal tool. So this is a reflection question, also introducing a new tool in Blackboard to faculty. So you might want to use a journal. Here's how it works. We then have a little bit of our contact information mirroring using built-in contact feature in Blackboard, which is really nice because it builds a database. So if you ever added a faculty member, you wouldn't have to go update this section. You just put them in as a contact. Automatically, it's going to be here. Right now, Patrice and I are the main instructors for this course. Maybe that will change. Maybe we'll add people. Who knows? But it will be really easy to update. And that's something, in modeling good design, we tried to make this as easy to update as possible. And then we have a little getting started quiz. Totally simple. There are hardly any wrong answers. It's basically, did you read this? And then that is used as a trigger for some certificates. So throughout the course, people can earn little baby badges or certificates that then add up to a certificate for completion of the full course. So the very first module begins with faculty perspectives, where Susan gets down. We won't play that.
Oh, good.
Don't worry. I see the look of, oh no, what did I sign up for?
Yeah.
we have a few different faculty sharing what it means to teach online, what has been their experience with teaching online. So I wanted to share with you one of these videos just to give you a little sneak peek of what it's like. So this is Michael Fontaine in the classics department.
Oh yeah, sure, I'll do that. That's a great idea. Or saying, I don't want to do this. This is kind of dumb. I've always done it one way. You can say that if you have big enrollments and people want to take your classes all the time anyway. But if you don't, or you'd like to reach new students that you won't get normally during the year, it's a great opportunity. I have students from all across the whole university, undergrad and grad, from every possible background. They take my course, which is Greek mythology, typically out of interest. They want to get it. Some are doing it as a requirement of some variety to get out. But you get to meet and communicate with students who would never be taking this otherwise, and show them a little something about your expertise. So that's if you are reluctant to do it. If you're eager to do it, you really have got to plan. You really have got to plan, and the whole thing has got to be ready to go before it starts. I can't impress that enough. That took me weeks to get through.
So throughout the course, we really rely on the student and the faculty voice because they're the ones out there learning online. They're the ones out there teaching online. So in as many places as possible, we've tried to take the back seat and to take ourselves. We're not telling you what to do. We're just showing you. Here's some faculty perspective on what works well, how they approached it. And then from the student side, what does that feel like to be in an online course? So I would like now to jump ahead to show you that student experience. What we did here in the Face-to-Face Institute, we would put people into a Blackboard course. And this was a totally demo course that we intentionally designed badly, and it was the most fun course I've ever had to build. And it seems over the top, and people look at it and go, really? Did faculty really do that? And everything was based on reality. Maybe there were more mistakes condensed than some courses would, but every single thing that we did in this bad design demo was just an example that we've run into somewhere. And so then we asked faculty in the room on the day of Institute to go ahead, get into that Blackboard course, and we gave them a few prompts. And we asked them to complete certain activities. And then reflect on what that felt like. How did it feel when, maybe you couldn't find something or figure out how to do something? Because this is a fully online course, it's hard to say, okay, here's a course. Now I want you to go to a separate Blackboard course. And it's really difficult in Blackboard to nest bad design inside of good design. So what we did is we took that same bad design course and we videotaped a student following the exact same prompts that in the room on the day of we would have faculty go through. And we recorded his reaction. And that's what we're going to share now. And so I'd like to work through these. I want to show them all to you because they're really good. I want you to see this. So we'll watch one and then we'll take a little time to discuss it, and I want you to make any observations, have a little discussion about it, and then we'll work through the next one. So,
I'm going to assume that there's discussion. I think I remember seeing that under the syllabus. All right, okay, so we got a quiz deadline September 18th. And pre-response due date September 22nd. Now, the question is whether I can do this quiz now. Can I do this quiz? Yeah. Why isn't it just like an online quiz, bro? Why isn't it just like a Blackboard quiz? Okay. Because I did see the deadline right here, but there's also the redesign syllabus. It's not in plain text form. Let's see if that's different. All right, quiz deadline is September 18th. Now, the only way this could be confusing is if the professor doesn't change the online for instance, like if the professor changes the deadline on the site but doesn't change it in this document, people would get confused.
Does anyone remember what the prompt was?
Find a due date.
Find a due date for
First discussion.
first discussion. What did he get so distracted by?
Quiz.
Yeah, fascinating. This did not even occur to me, but when there was a quiz, students went, quiz, have to find how to do that. Completely missed that we asked them to find a discussion prompt. So it's to take into mind as you're designing that quizzes become kind of all-consuming. And then maybe we should separate out quizzes from discussions. It was really funny to watch him do this because there was no disagreement in the quiz deadline. That was correct through all the places, but the discussion deadline had contradictory information in the course. So I was hoping, as you know, the designer here, that, oh yeah, he'll go find these contradictory dates for the discussion deadline. Oh wait, he's not even remembering what I asked him to do. Okay, this is a whole new level of fascinating. Let's just keep it rolling and watch what happens. What other observations did people make? And if you're on Zoom and you want to unmute and talk, we will be able to hear you in the room. 90% sure? Or Heather's monitoring by text too. So.
Well, he did sort of find the problem that was the discussion module problem is that there were dates in other places, and he
Yes.
found that if they don't change this, and it seems like he probably has had that before because he kind of zeroed in on that pretty quickly.
We did edit out some pauses.
Well, one of the things you guys advised me was to just, because I wanted the students to be able to go through in a certain order and complete a certain amount of work before they took a quiz. And so they don't even see the quiz until they don't see the next step until they've completed the step they're supposed to, which then maybe avoids some confusion to them as to how to go through it.
Right.
And they don't get ahead of themselves.
Right.
It's not
Especially
even
if the
there.
quiz is there, but they can't actually open it yet.
Right. I'm not sure they even see it when it's not, you know.
If it's an adaptive release, they wouldn't see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it makes it easier for them to focus in on, here's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
I couldn't see what he had opened, but I think he opened up the quiz and he was like, why couldn't this just be an online quiz? What was the quiz he opened? Was it like a Word document of a quiz that he was supposed to fill out and then resubmit or something?
He opened a Word document that had the discussion questions in it, not even the quiz.
Okay.
Is there anything coming from Zoom?
I don't see.
Okay. Any other observations on this one? Camille looked like you might. No? So this prompt is to find the PowerPoint slides for the section designing the student experience, or module 8 was the header I gave him for that. Let's make it full screen this time.
Are these files the same? Why is it listed twice? Found the syllabus. Let's go. Module 8. Redesign for Online Institute syllabus. Our question is the PowerPoints, do they contain everything? Because I have downloaded PowerPoint. I want to see if this is it. Oh my gosh. Oh geez. All right, full screen, bam. I don't see any modules. Online learning module. It should be in contents, right? Readings or assignment materials? Let's go for assignment materials. These don't look like is this thing even on here? That's not it. Why are these all? Ideally, the professor tells me to look for something, it should be in the contents. But here we have two content sections. We have institute content and contents. I don't know what the difference is between the institute and content. It's a module, so is it assignment or a reading? Let's open both tabs and see what happens. I guess I'm a screen reader. Let's open that and see what happens. Oh, but that's this doesn't have modules, does it? Back in course info, we see a module 8 right here. Title of it's putting it all together. All right. I think that's misspelled. Oh, I found something with chapter 8, but I can't click it. Oh, what if I use discussions to ask people where they can find it? What if I just send the professor? I don't think I'm gonna call it. But it's not PowerPoint I'm downloading, is it? All right, okay, I guess this is it then. Does that look right? That was frustrating.
Okay. What do you guys think of that one?
It's painful.
But yeah.
Painful?
Yeah.
It was really hard to sit there and not interrupt and try to help him. And that's where I think in a face-to-face course you can help people. You can answer questions. You can see when they're frustrated, but in an online course, you never see that. So it's easy to forget what the other side of the computer looks like, right?
Now, have any of you been online students and had either, do you share your experience?
I'm currently doing a master's program, so
Oh, great.
Blackboard stuff, and it can be really challenging. Plus, in our first session, we did 6 online courses for the MMH program just to start the program. So 6 right off the bat, and then 2 courses right now. I have to say one of the professors is really straightforward, and everything seems to be fairly logical. But the other one, I do that. Click around and go, this is not the right place. Is it a reading? Is it an assignment? And so.
It seems like it would be better if there were fewer types of things and everything is consistently named. And if it's module 8 with a title, you should have everywhere labeled module 8 : title. So, because it seemed like, did he get to the right place at the end?
No.
No.
He got to a PowerPoint. He did not get to the correct PowerPoint.
Okay.
Yeah, again, I think you guys recommended, and what I did on the left side of Blackboard was, because I have 6 modules, and each module has 3 units, and under that there's readings, there's self-assessment questions, and there's a problem that they have to do. And so each one is organized exactly the same according to the sequence in which they're going to do.
And you always call them the same thing.
Exactly.
And they're
numbered,
content.
and they're numbered sequentially, so that they know exactly. And then when they have questions, they refer to the numbers. 1.2.1, question 3. You know, so it's very. But I thought that was a good idea. Instead of doing readings, questions, quizzes, it's all organized sequentially.
Yep.
I guess I have a question for you in organizing your course. A few years ago, I was co-teaching not an online course. The other instructor and I ended up calling things differently. So I ended up fumbling, like the student trying to figure out where she had put something that we had agreed upon. So we were both confusing each other. And the other thing is, sometimes maybe at the start of the semester, I call something one thing, and in the middle of the semester, I refer to it by a different name because it's in the middle of semester, my mind's not in the same spot. So I guess my question to you is, when you're designing your online course, do you have a checklist? Make sure that all the names are the same, all the terms are the same, because you're producing it at different stages, I suppose.
Yeah, but we do. And under each one, they're each called the same thing. And then in the grade center, they're called the same. They're classified exactly the way we called them when they were going through the material. but the student, that's one of the things I think students are really sensitive to, is that degree of organization. And my guess is, as they should worse on an online course, you can get away with a lot more in a classroom course.
Right. And they're more, I think, more willing to ask you face to face. Anyone hear him say like, "Oh, I don't want to put anyone on blast." I said it really quietly, but it was, I don't want to call anyone out for a mistake. And at the end, I asked him to reflect on that a little bit more, because I thought that was such an interesting point that he raised.
Is there a way to like just hyperlink everything when he's like looking at sort of the outline in the syllabus?
Yeah, and that's one of the great things in really good course design, is to only put each document in one place. So you only have one place to update, and everything else just functions by links.
But you can link to it from many views, like in the syllabus, and you can link to it from
and not having things nested within folders and files and documents. So if it's a crucial piece of information, put that right in a Blackboard item. Don't make a student download a Word document, open a Word document, and figure out when the deadline is.
I also noticed that it seemed like he opened a bunch of PowerPoints and he couldn't tell what the title of it was going to be until he actually like got it open.
Exactly.
So he wasted a lot of time.
Yeah. And that was because there was a difference in the title of the Blackboard object versus the file name.
I think what you just said is
We've got
important.
someone on Zoom, do we?
Raising their hand.
So
cool.
we don't want
Call on
students
them.
wasting time. So like making it easier to navigate and get more kind of learning.
Right.
Less just trying to figure out.
If you're raising your hand on Zoom, go ahead, unmute yourself and talk, and I think we'll be able to hear you.
Yeah, this is Celeste. Can you hear me okay?
Can, perfectly.
Okay, so I just got finished with an online degree program in instructional design. It was about instructional design and online learning. So it was kind of fun because it was modeled, right? You know, what's going to work and what's not going to work. And one of the things that I found most useful, and I try to bring that into the work that I'm doing with folks across the state in an online environment, is just to ensure that people know and feel comfortable to ask questions, because, you know, I mean, not everything is going to be perfect, right? You know, I mean, you're going to set it up. It's really nice to have somebody walk through it like you did with a student kind of walking through these different modules and coming up with things that they were confused about. That's wonderful, but it doesn't always happen that way. So you want to make sure that students feel comfortable asking questions. And, you know, somebody said in a face-to-face environment that just naturally happens or happens easier. I would disagree, because I do think that there are some students that feel very comfortable asking a faculty member or whoever's teaching a course something, but there's others that are not likely to do that and may feel more comfortable in an online environment asking questions or sending something in some kind of a discussion board or whatever, and pointing things out, but just making sure that students feel comfortable, you know, just indicating, I can't find such and such a document, and it's a safe place to be able to ask those things. I think that makes a big difference.
Absolutely, that's a great point.
I'd echo that, in that right off the bat in one of my classes, in my face-to-face classes, she said everything's on Blackboard. Don't ask me questions, find it there. And you don't find it there, you're like, okay, you know, it's not a safe place anymore to really ask.
Right.
You know, and so she gets really frustrated if you don't do your due diligence. And you know, maybe some students don't work hard enough, but to your point, you shouldn't have to work hard at finding it.
Exactly.
Do you feel like it's better to have separate discussion areas for like Blackboard technical things and then like course related content, so it doesn't get all mixed up together?
Course content discussions, there should be a separate forum for each specific discussion question, and then make a general place where you can ask, how do I find this? What's the due date? I can't log in. There's some technical stuff that you should be sending them to the ATC center, and they can sort out if it is a technical login problem. But anything else within the course, absolutely. Creating that general discussion forum. And then to go one step further, in addition to that general ask specific questions here, you can have a share general things here. So you can really create that kind of culture of interesting things that might relate to the course content, but don't specifically fit in any of the module questions. That's a nice place for students to share. And when we work with faculty, especially in larger online courses, empowering students to answer peers' questions in the help question forum is crucial. Because you don't want to be relying on you as a faculty member logging in, checking it, answering every single one. If a student sees a question they know an answer, they can post it.
Yeah.
And in Blackboard and most learning management systems, you have the ability to turn on ranking of posts, so you can do it kind of like upvotes. The correct answer, it can get 5 stars, or maybe it's a 4 scale in Blackboard, I forget which. Yeah. Anything else from the Zoom world? I can't see you, I'm really sorry, but.
Just a comment from Celeste, just to say, I would say a place to encourage each other and each other / students answering each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, that was what you just said as I was typing it. So
I'm so glad I
agreeing with you.
feel right. Let's see. So this is similar. I don't think I'll spend the time showing you. It's a similar struggle. Different points come up. But this, I really do want to show because I asked him when he said, oh, maybe I'll go ask for help in a discussion forum. Oh, don't want to put anyone on blast after he went through the whole course. So just let's unpack that a little. Let's talk about that. So let's get ourselves volume here.
I guess the first time I was going to reach out to someone was with the discussion, but I definitely decided against it because there's no need to like put anyone on blast. There's no need to like publicize the fact that something isn't done right. So yeah, an email would be more of a concise, direct way to address a problem. On the topic of me not wanting to be seen by my peers, I think I've overcome that after taking an online course, and the only way to get answers was to post in the discussion. I emailed my TA and I was like, oh, you should go to the discussions. A similar question has been asked and answered. Sometimes the response rates were kind of slow. I'm not gonna lie. There'd be like a case that we do the day of, and no one has heard anything from the professor or TA. So it's like, what do you want us to do?
Anyone have a similar experience? Online learners feeling like you're just cast into this void for
I definitely have they do same day, but my experiences were it was an Cornell course, not so much Blackboard, and people were pretty responsive. So they're doing a good job there, I think. So day of things being turned in, and hours before, and there was still the community was there supporting it. So positive experience there.
Good. Good to hear. That's how it should all be, right? Responsive. The piece I found most interesting about this was that he mentions kind of having been trained by one online course that taught him to go to the discussion forum and getting over his feeling like he's having to admit he's wrong or can't figure something out in front of his peers. And then something I think it's important to keep in mind is what is the experience level of all of your learners, and have they done this online before? And they might need a little bit of coaching to realize that it's okay, this is a friendly environment, we can all share.
So I had my students, I've encouraged them all to form small study groups.
Yeah.
And we used the discussion forum to set those up, and a bunch of them did. But I also had discussion forums, and people would post them. But some of the students told me, if they had questions, they would just text the people in their study group.
Yeah.
You know, because they know them, and so I think, especially as the courses maybe get larger, some of the students feel less inhibited about communicating within a smaller group. Yeah.
And that's a blended course where they have those face-to-face relationships already.
Right, that was my question too.
Well, no, there's a totally,
that was a totally
online course, but I asked them right at the very first day to form study groups. I released who was in the class.
Yeah.
Were those in-person study groups then, or were they?
Yes, I encouraged them to form small groups and meet on a regular basis.
Okay, that's the challenge. Like our group,
it was challenging
because the Cornell courses, when we started the program, nobody was on campus yet.
Yeah.
So we were going to be here in June, but April through June.
Right. See, mine's totally just for Cornell students, just on campus.
I have a question for you. Did they meet online or did they meet?
Well, they kind of signed up online, and they were, basically I encouraged them to say, okay, if you want to form a study group, say when you could meet and where, you know, because some of them, you know, they're all on North Campus and they want to meet up. And then they would respond to that and form these little groups. About half of them did that. About half of them you couldn't really.
See a difference in the grades?
No, I don't think so.
And did you have TAs for?
I had one.
Because I'm thinking back when I was in school and we didn't have online, I didn't take an online course there, but we had mandatory homework times where we were all supposed to come in and there was a TA present.
Yeah.
And like there was not any additional assignments assigned for that time. It was like the homework you were supposed to have done all week anyway. Everyone has to come and sit in this room and do it together.
Yeah.
For now.
We didn't record that, and because but this is, I think, a big decision on an online course. It's like because they could go through at any pace they wanted, and so the last day will be Friday, and all but one person finished the course in 3 weeks, and then another one finished it last week, but everybody else tomorrow. Yeah.
Oh, so you just have 2 people that finished so far?
Yeah, okay. But there was one person who went right through. I mean, it was lucky I was trying to keep up with it because I was doing the last few years.
Did they do a good job?
Yeah, they did an excellent job. So, but that is one of the advantages to students if they want to, if they're organized enough to work that way and organize their semester that way. She was a senior, so.
Seniors.
Yeah, so I think.
Tidy everything up, and yeah.
Is there a way on Blackboard to post without putting your name? Because I feel like that would be a problem for a lot of students.
You can enable anonymous posts.
Yeah.
Yes.
But students don't know that, or that's just wasn't an option?
Faculty tend not to know that because that comes from the discussion board setup side of it. That's part of one of the little tiny things that if we can help faculty learn through this course, we're doing a good job.
Now, if it's an anonymous post, can the faculty still grade? Like, do the faculty know which student it was?
I think you can set it either way. I think
You
there's
can?
totally
That'd be
anonymous
interesting.
or just the instructor
No.
can see. Another hand raised. All right, go ahead, unmute yourself on Zoom if you've got a question. Or you can type it, whatever makes you most comfortable.
It's Celeste again. Question about the course that kind of runs is open, right? Versus a course where a topic might be, a module would be opened every week, you know, coordinating with a specific syllabus or whatever. Have just interested to know what experiences you've had and how those 2 formats compare with one another. I've had some experience offering what I call like a la carte courses. You know, people come in and do what they want to do when they want to do them. And also some other experiences where modules are released on a periodic basis, you know, like according to a schedule or a syllabus. But I'm curious what other people's experiences have been.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone in the room has.
Yeah, I've taken like 2 different online classes where one had everything and one didn't, and I like to see everything.
Yeah.
I just like to see everything all the time. And also it helped me pace myself when I was like, okay, there's this. And I could look at things that I found more interesting, even if they were.
I can imagine it helps. It's like the same way as like you read the table of contents of a book to help you put what you're learning on perspective of the whole thing.
The most crucial piece there too is in designing the online experience is how much interaction do you want with the students and how much do you want them working together. There is, like Susan was saying, if a student finishes it in 3 weeks, they're not working through with their cohort.
Right.
Well, exactly. And I think there's research that, you know, that talks about, you know, interaction and building that community and collaborative spirit.
Right.
Like if that's what your outcomes, if that's what you're looking for, then my experience is having everything open all the time makes it really hard for me as an instructor and makes it a little challenging for people who are ready to chase any squirrel that's out there, right? And so they don't know what to focus on when there's all of these opportunities and topics, but that could just be my experience. So I'm curious what other people have experienced.
So two comments here on the Zoom chat. So one is from Art to the discussion before about the anonymous chats. He's just confirming that he has himself set up courses in Blackboard and course sites with the anonymous chat, and then There's a question from Paul. Is there any difference in best practices for Blackboard when setting up 100% online course versus using Blackboard within a residential course, such as flipping the classroom? Or are the best practices pretty much under the same for both?
They're pretty much the same. You can get away with more things in that flipped class because you were there to help add guidance. But when it comes to, especially the next section we're going to move on to here, accessibility, that really matters across the board, regardless of whether you're fully online or whether you're flipping the classroom. Because it will make it so much easier down the road. Let's see. So for time-wise, I think we should keep moving. There's one last video of Chino that I thought was short, but it's really a nice piece of advice to everyone who's involved with designing online. So before we move into accessibility, let's just watch.
It just needs to be simple. Looking at this course, there were a lot of unnecessary labels on the left-hand side. Discussions and discussion questions were two separate themes. I mean, I guess I could see why they were. Institute content versus content were two separate themes. I don't know why. So there was a lot of redundancy. Keeping it concise would be the ideal. I mean, literally, just being concise is the key point. It's honestly the key point. As long as your students have access to what they need and it's in the right spot, and the course is easy to navigate. That's crucial.
Concise, I think. It's so nice to let a student speak for us because we can advise certain things all day long, but when you hear it and you see it, it makes a difference. Okay, so jumping over to accessibility, and this, in last year's face-to-face institute, we put in a segment on accessibility, which we did not have there the year before. And we intended it to be a very short, quick overview. And people went nuts because this was such a hot button item. Everyone immediately wanted more information, wanted to know what we were talking about. Federally mandated laws scare people, and they should, because Cornell University is on the line for all of our online content. So we took an approach with this online course of trying to really mirror best practices for accessibility, breaking it down into 3 key areas, and then doing a really good job of providing examples, letting faculty going through this course know who's responsible for which pieces, and then how they can do it. So implementation, who's responsible, how am I actually going to make this happen? So the 3 areas that need to be focused on are accessible documents and images, video and audio files, providing captioning. Audio files, you can get away with just transcripts. It doesn't need to be a timed captioning file. And then providing clear navigation and layout. So that's combining the principles of universal design along with the ADA rules for compliance. And there's this linked EDUCAUSE article is really, really, really fantastic, and it's a really lengthy article, and I will share the URL. We'll get that out to the whole Culk group because it is so good. It starts off with a rather intimidating list of colleges and then says, so what do these all have in common? They're all facing some sort of civil inquiry because of the accessibility of their online content. But doesn't leave it with that scary note. It talks through the implications of all the different laws and really specifically looks at online course design.
Yeah, well, Cindy Maness told me a couple of days ago, she was at a meeting, Monday, I guess, with one of the vice presidents of Cornell, who's in charge of eCornell, which I guess all eCornells are ADA compliant. Mm-hmm. And he said that they were not going to allow any online course taught at Cornell that was not ADA compliant.
We are moving. We're in the process right now. We began with the School of Continuing Education courses and undergoing a quality review process with those that also includes an accessibility piece. So it's certainly gathering momentum campus-wide.
She said a decision had been made. So. So I don't know, but.
There is a quality assurance working group. I have not
Heard that.
heard
yeah.
about any final decisions
Decision,
coming from it, but I know who you're speaking of, and I know he's on the group, so.
Yeah. So, but the one thing I think will be confusing to the faculty is a regular course doesn't have to be this way.
Exactly.
And so it's very confusing why, if you assign some reading in an online course and you could say to assign the exact same reading in an in-class course, and you can't do it on the online.
Yes, and because
It's very
students in
strange.
face-to-face, they can go to STS, they have a documented disability, they can then submit that course for transcription, for conversion, whatever they need in a more one-to-one personalized way. Online content is considered more public-based.
Yeah, but not if it's totally within Cornell.
Exactly.
But
Yeah,
only
know.
only Cornell students on campus are
Yes.
allowed to take Cornell online courses. So.
Yeah, and I think, we're really trying to take the approach that universal design is good for
Yeah,
everyone.
I would agree.
Yeah.
And so
I-
we're hoping that it will also merge into face-to-face as
Right.
well. I think just with everything, online always seems to get dinged first.
I'm just saying, I think it's gonna be very
And
confusing
the
to
other
the faculty.
confusing thing up to this point is there really has not been a Cornell stance on what ADA compliance means. So we've just been trying to guide faculty and work with them and, provide these resources.
I think it'll be interesting because my course, several online courses that are math and physics oriented. There's no way you can make them available to blind people. That's just not possible. You'd have to have totally separate courses. You could have visually impaired people and do bigger fonts, but so there's some kind of things where, because of using almost entirely the whole thing is math and equations.
You'd be amazed what screen readers can do, and there's a lot of formatting, there's a lot of back end.
Well, I went and read some articles and they said you basically need this special type of braille.
Yeah, braille or very specific.
It's a Benton braille or something. It's a very specific thing. So you'd have to translate hundreds and hundreds of pages of equations into that. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know how they do it now.
I agree, and I
So-
think it's a huge ball of wax
that all universities are trying to
yeah, and it's exactly it.
But Cornell
What
must
is
have
the
already
threshold?
faced any blind student who wants to take a math course. You can't go into a regular in-class calculus course.
That's what Student Disability Services does, I believe. So when they're doing all that trip, they do the.
Right, so why wouldn't they do that for an online course?
And we're working with them to
Hi,
figure out.
this is Paul. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can.
Oh, hi. I assume Diane's not in there
Course.
because Diane would certainly speak up if she could hear. But I'm involved with Julia and Diane and basically and was part of meeting with the associate deans to talk about some of the I guess two parts. One, defining sort of the quality standards, including accessibility, and then basically having processes in place to make sure that we're consistently applying those standards, both of which, and in many different cases, Cornell is saying we do in fact have defined standards, and that we do in fact have standards to make sure that we are reviewing courses for both the, I guess, the legal compliance issues of accessibility and just quality overall. And so I think the key is that a lot of courses that are used for Cornell students are also made available externally. And as soon as something's made, and in both cases, there's a set of things that Cornell has to attest to, that we do in fact have standards and we're following those standards. And I think it's not always as black and white, but if there are situations in where we've made reasonable accommodations, right? So the way things are written is that we're going to make reasonable accommodations and use the technology that exists to support accessibility. We need to do that. And in some cases, it's a matter of saying, look, this is really tough to make accessible. And so we have statements on the course that simply say, if you need extra assistance, then contact us at such and such a place. Right. So there are workarounds, but I definitely work with Diane and the Center for Teaching Excellence if there's any questions at all about exactly how accessibility, what you need to do, what's required and what's not. There's actually a lot of legal liability on top of everything else in this whole space. So
Yeah, you start seeing Berkeley pulling out all of their online content because it's easier to remove it from the web than to caption it, and that's.
But you wouldn't, I would think in my case, because we have a lot of videos from all over the web, mainly produced by the federal government, but they're not ADA compliant.
They would have to be.
No, NASA,
Really?
NOAA, all the major agencies,
They
the
don't have captions.
Department of Energy, no, they have all kinds of nice videos that don't have any caption.
Really?
No,
That just shocks me.
Almost none. So, but you, it seems like you know, in that case, it's really good for students who can see that, and
Yeah.
but you can provide alternative material that you can have.
Yeah.
that
That's a
people-
key. I think,
That
is
people can
alternative
read,
material.
exactly.
Yeah.
So-
Something that's a screen reader.
And
friendly.
you can, and we can provide script for all the stuff we do,
Exactly.
but to do that for all these external sources.
Yeah, and we can't legally submit for transcription or captioning
Yeah.
videos we don't own, so.
No,
Yeah.
most of the government stuff done by NSF, whoever, none of that would be subtitled. I've never seen any subtitles.
I think some of the reason behind that also is that a lot of these National Science Foundation grants, the universities are getting funded by that organization. So it's coming from the university to the foundation, then getting put online. So it's all coming back to the institution to make it ADA. I mean, the government is still catching up.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so that's how
Yeah.
it's.
And there's a difference between resources up on the web and something that's part of a formal degree program or formal 4-credit program, or even something that's required training for a government employee. So the enforcement mechanisms in a lot of this is simply saying that you're providing equal access. You know, if it's a resource on the web, then that's not necessarily, doesn't always fall under the same regulations.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
The follow-up, does this apply to tutorials?
Yeah.
Short tutorials, everything?
Everything.
As far as I interpret it at this stage, yes. All
But that could be a resource, which is what Paul just said.
right. So then, is there an?
Yeah, I would say like we're not the experts.
Yeah.
You know, we provide
an
guidance,
alternate?
but we're not like the legal experts to answer that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we do have the text that Paul was mentioning that we can share with anyone.
Is that Cornell's thing, or I mean, is it, or they're still working on coming up with their own?
Well, I mean, our understanding is they're still working on it, unless you heard differently.
No, just that they were going to insist. It's kind of like the Berkeley thing. You're just going to take them off.
Well, that was different. Those were open.
Yes.
So that's a little bit.
Right. Right. But they were going to take up. They're afraid of being audited.
Yeah.
Even for their online courses that are only available to Cornell students on campus.
Yes, and that also comes back to accreditation requirements and accreditation requirements incorporating accessibility. So it all becomes very circular, and the moral is the more you can make accessible.
I know. And the strange thing for our
yeah.
courses, we teach it both as an online course and as an in-class course. And so we don't have to have any of this for our in-class course, but we would have to have it for the online course.
And I think, you know, being proactive is better for the student also, because if you know, the students in the face-to-face class, many times they may have to wait several days to get the material they need, and now they're behind. So that, again, we're hoping that by being proactive, it really benefits everyone.
Yeah, there are also students who don't disclose disabilities, who do have disabilities, and that becomes, the more you can make it so that they don't have to feel stigmatized, the better it is.
But that's one of the huge advantages of an online course.
Absolutely.
I found, Andrea, because so many of the students now, their major issue is stress. And, you know, class doesn't meet all the time and so on. They have no control kind of over their schedule. And an online course gives them a lot more control over their schedule. And also you give them more time. They can take as much time as they want. So I feel like the online courses are really helping some of the issues that most of our, a lot of our students have.
The anxiety, stress, pressure,
So-
absolutely. So on the topic of accessibility, when we're talking about making documents, I know you probably heard me use the term screen reader. We have a video here that shows a Cornell student, and he talks a bit, and I'll let him do the talking for me here, but he's using a screen reader, and a screen reader is software that reads aloud the text and the different navigational components of the website.
My name is Mark.
I'm a junior currently studying biological engineering. I'm looking to graduate next spring, so just one more year left. I started losing the majority of my vision around like the 3rd grade, and I went through a series of like retinal detachments or glaucoma, and had a number of surgeries, and those surgeries combined with the glasses would still keep me on track with a normal amount of vision. So JAWS is a screen reading technology, so we'll read everything on the screen, and it interacts with operating system via keyboard commands.
D30 center.
Blind visually impaired people won't be able to use the mouse and the graphical user interface, so JAWS is hooked up to a lot of different unique keyboard commands to that, to JAWS and to the OS itself. And so going through any program, like let's say like if I were to open up Microsoft Word,
Alt Control W. Document 1 word.
Navigating through Word, you have up at the top of the ribbon, all of them have different like access keys that you can shortcut to.
Insert tab, design tab, page layout tab, references tab, menu.
Typing in the page itself, you know, it's just regular typing, just as anyone else would type with audio feedback. Without JAWS, I think as far as academics go, it would be a lot harder. Probably almost like near impossible. Given like my vision, it's very difficult for me to read more than like maybe 1 or 2 sentences at a time. So if I had to do these extensive reading assignments, you know, they'd probably take me days. Whereas, you know, doing it with JAWS, I can read it in a normal time frame, just like anyone else.
New lecture outline for lecture 22/3/14/14 heading.
So I would like to go to graduate school and go on to get like a PhD in biomedical engineering. So definitely with you know, the amounts of papers that I'll need to be reading for research, you know, just regular classwork, JAWS is going to be definitely a huge component of that in digesting all that material.
Bullet demonstrate creep and relaxation behavior and test. Bullet develop the appropriate mechanical model for creep and relaxation. Bullet calculate the element constants in each model for a selected material.
I don't see myself ever really leaving JAWS or any kind of assistive technology, given that it's helped me, you know, get this far.
Anyone listened to a screen reader before? Fascinatingly quick, isn't it?
So Cornell has that's available to students. So presumably if you're doing stuff in Blackboard or...
If they're using that, so that would be a screen reader software that sits on an individual's computer. So they're using this program to help them interpret websites and files and programs.
So that's just automatically would be available to all the online courses that are using any kind of text.
It would be available to students. So it's not anything that you'd have to install on your end. It's from their access.
So we be ADA compliant because Cornell has agreed to supply that to all students.
What makes it ADA compliant is that the core, whatever you put up, JAWS can read.
Yeah.
So what makes it?
Yeah. So
and that's so when you get into
Blackboard.
Blackboard. We take their word for it as a vendor. They tell us they meet accessibility. We don't do our own accessibility audit of Blackboard, but there are ways that you can use Blackboard that make it easier to navigate. And then especially within documents. And this is where using really simple changes in how you approach your content design, using heading structure rather than going bold, size 22 to define your headings. Use, you know, in the top of Word where you can apply styling, you can give it a heading 1, 2, 3 level. That metadata that gets associated with documents is what builds the navigable table of contents that a screen reader can use. And the same thing applies in Blackboard items. If you are building within Blackboard and you want to create a heading, Blackboard gives you an option to highlight it and click subheading 1.
Right.
Subheading 2. So that's building in the navigation that makes it friendly. So someone using a screen reader can quickly step through, they know where they are on the page.
Yeah. So the question I had is, so with this ADA compliance standard, is Cornell making it required that all course packets be electronic? Because if they're not, then how is the screen reader going to work if you still have printed materials that are part of your course packets for a particular course?
If that's face-to-face, that would go through the normal SDS process where they'd have to bring that through whatever, I don't even know exactly how students.
But you mean even if you're an online student, you might have a paper course packet?
I'm just thinking I'm even speaking to if you're an on-prem student, like if you're on campus and then you're teaching a course, then all of a sudden you have a student that needs to have this technology to be able to read content, that you have, you're only providing printed materials in a course pack that you buy from the bookstore. That's not going to help that student.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to a textbook.
Right.
Yeah, and they're typically, if they're an on-campus student who's getting print materials, they're working with SDS to convert that for them to use.
Oh,
so
okay.
that process
Yeah, it's
would be
just
the
if
same.
you're on campus student taking an online course, you can't.
But
you could do it,
You
but
could do
but you have to assume that they're not going to do it.
But that said, like, how easy is it for you to email the PDF version of the syllabus so they don't have to go get it scanned in and translated? And like, if it is possible, like, don't you think it would be easy enough to?
if they exist, there's some things that copyright make it tricky to get digital copies of.
Okay.
And that's why SDS does what they do.
Okay.
We are at 1 o'clock, and I know that accessibility is going to take up so much time because it's a really, really fascinating topic. There are resources associated with this course. We step through screen readers, captioning, transcripts, and then a nice checklist, and there's documentation on responsibilities. This course will be available. This was a cruel teaser, and that you'll all be able to sign up and enroll in this in the coming.
Is it only faculty?
I think we're going to do anyone with Cornell Med ID. Type up, I will. I'm looking at the questions here, and there are some excellent ones that we answered, and there are some equally excellent ones that we did not, but that there are some good answers.
If you didn't hand your questions in, we'll take them.
So hand in your questions here or submit them in Zoom, and we will be sure to make a nice little cult update or put them in Yammer or some other way of sharing. Thank you, everyone on Zoom.
This was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
You talk about the map.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone in the room. I know that everyone likely has more questions, particularly about accessibility.
So you're saying, but right now Blackboard or any of the platforms you would get would be compatible so long as you use them in all their testing, all that.
Yep. Exactly.
They'd be able to read the questions and read the multiple choice answers or whatever.
If you're building within the LMS and you're not relying too heavily on attached documents, then you're in great shape.
Yeah, I've done all that.
Yep.
So
And
it's just a big problem, as I said, it's
submitting
when you
video
say,
captioning is the other really big
sigma to the fourth divided by e raised to the x over y divided by z times 20. You know, it's like, that's a little hard to,
I know, like,
and then rearrange that equation.
the latex
So,
equations.
geez.
There's got to be accessible.
I don't know, I went online the other day saying that it's really, for people who are completely blind, you probably can see equations. It's funny.